Hi, Kristen. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Whitney, thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's such a treat for me to chat with you. Like I had mentioned to you before, you are also a chef. You've had the most incredible career, and I am excited to learn about how you moved into all these different avenues as a chef and an entrepreneur. And I really admire your philosophy because I believe that we have a lot of things in common about how we look at food, health, and well-being.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. I think it's interesting because, if you're a traditionally trained chef, I think the emphasis in historically is always on taste as number one, right? Which it definitely is for us as well. I'm sure you fit into the same category, but um I have found in my personal history and then, cooking for others, the discovery process between the food that you eat, how you live your life, and the results that you get as a human being and for your total overall health is just so tremendous. And then there's also, you can then connect that piece back to how to make the food also taste really good instead of, I think people think about healthy eating as a sacrifice, and it really just doesn't have to be that way at all.
Yeah, that's so interesting because when I go to cook food for a client or myself, I'm never thinking about the taste because I know it's going to taste great. I'm thinking about what do I really feel like I need right now? Or what are they telling me they really need right now? And designing menus around that, knowing that no matter what, the taste is going to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. I forget about that sometimes. And I'm sure you're a pretty intuitive chef. So do you taste test everything or do you just know how
I
to come
yeah,
together?
I mean, I think like it really depends. I mean, I taste test the things that I need to, but no, you're right. I mean, there's a certain degree, like if you're comfortable cooking, you know what's going to taste good, you know how
Mhm.
it's going to turn out. But I think it's a good practice in the kitchen to always taste along the way. I just like to make sure the way that I think about food is in terms of recipe creation and things like that. And when I'm just cooking kind of on the fly in the kitchen for my clients or myself, it's like every layer I try to maximize the flavor in every layer of what I'm cooking, if that makes sense. So, so that you're thinking through each piece as an individual. And then when it comes together, then it kind of creates a super tasty meal. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
I do the same thing. There's things on the plate that have to be super flavorful and rich, while others have to be really light to balance it all out
Yeah.
because I'm always thinking about the body and how I want to feel in the body, which is balanced. And so what I want to give people on a plate is something that's balanced because
Hmm.
if it's there, it'll match in real life.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
So I just am blown away by the career that you've created for yourself. And you worked at Food Network, the cooking
Yes.
channel, and then you rolled into connecting with Dr. Peter Diadamo and Eating Right for Your Blood Type and creating all those cookbooks.
Yeah.
How did you guys first connect and how did you first become aware of eating right for your blood type?
So it's an interesting question. So when I was when I was working for Food Network, my mom got really sick, and she had gone to doctors, in the area, and then saw naturopaths, and nothing was really helping her. And it got to the point where she really needed to make a huge shift, or else, there would be major consequences to her health. And I remember the Eat Right for Your Blood Type book being at my parents' house when I was like I can't remember the year it came out. I feel like it was 1998 or 99 when the first one came out. But I remember being there, but it wasn't something that my mom, I think, was really fully cognizant of. Like she didn't remember that, like having that in the house. And she just opened up the newspaper and saw an advertisement for Dr. Diadamo's practice that was in Wilton, Connecticut at the time. And so I took her to her first appointment and met Dr. Diadamo. And then I continued taking her. I would come home and take her to appointments when my dad couldn't, and really got to know Dr. D. He's an amazing guy. And he always asked me what I was doing, as, her daughter, helping her out and being around. And at one point I showed him a cookbook I had drafted for myself, just writing about health. And he was trying to help me get it published. But because I don't have a name, like at the time, and still now, like enough to really, easily get a cookbook published, he just came to me and said, look, if you could come up with a concept for 4 cookbooks, one for each blood type, let's meet in 2 weeks. And if you'd be interested in doing that, that would be great. So I came up with a concept, and the concept was that each blood type would have the same type of meals, but I would have variations on each meal that would meet the needs of each blood type. So for instance, if you're making chili, type O would have red meat and certain beans. Type A would have probably chicken and certain, you know what I mean? So it would vary depending on who is eating. But that way families could sort of eat together in an easier way, because you can also, the point of doing that also is that you could look at the different recipes across the board of all 4 blood types and find commonalities. So I pitched the concept to him. He loved it. And we ended up collaborating on this cookbook together. And he spent hours teaching me in a little classroom that they had, and all about the blood type and really the reasons why it was important to eat a certain way for certain blood types. And the blood type diet doesn't start and stop with blood type. It goes into lifestyle, it goes into a lot of other elements. And when you go to him, or his daughter is a naturopath as well, when you go to them, they look at your gut microbiome, your genetics, all of these things kind of factor into it. But so that was how I got to know him and how those books came about.
How did learning that change how you approached eating?
It revolutionized how I approach eating. I eat according to the blood type diet. There's little things that I do that are kind of I consider my vices that are not really vices, to be totally honest. They're just me not, necessarily always doing the blood type diet 100%, just because there's certain things that I really like that maybe aren't. And so the way that I approach it now is that, I think the piece with the blood type diet that I learned is how personalized nutrition is for each individual. So even when I started cooking for somebody and helped them implement the blood type diet, it wasn't just that. I would look at a lot of other pieces of their overall health and try to evaluate and work with them. As you said earlier, it was, people's bodies change, time of year. There's so many factors that go into play with how to make a person healthy, but they're very, very specific and individual. And so I think it made me really that you have to listen to your body. When for us as chefs, we have to listen to people that we cook for, and realize that it's very important to be individual about it, personalized.
Are you comfortable sharing which blood type you are?
Yeah, I'm an O.
Oh, okay.
So I'm the most common. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad's an O. I'm a B positive. So I'm very familiar with the blood type diet, something that I've been following since it first came out.
Mhm.
And long before I was a chef, have always gone through phases where I follow it strictly. I follow it 80/20, but that information's always in my mind when I especially go to choose proteins or certain ingredients, because you learn really quickly that if you follow it and you eliminate certain foods from your diet, when you bring them back in, you don't feel as good when you eat them.
Yeah. And the 80/20 thing that you just said too is an important part of it. Even Dr. D'Adamo himself says all the time that unless you're acutely ill or something really specific is going on for you that you need to address, you don't have to be that rigid. And the point that he taught me that I really love is that, and the way that I help my clients and even myself, is that you can see what foods are super beneficial to you, the ones that really make you feel good, and you just focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of can fill in the gaps with other things, but it doesn't have to be this focus on, what's not working. It can be the opposite. It can be focusing on those foods that are really good for you and that actually you enjoy eating and they make you feel great.
That's a really good approach. I'd love to know, because I feel like breakfast is one of the times a day that people are most challenged in choosing something that's good for them. What do you like making for yourself for breakfast for someone that's O type?
Well, so my diet is but I also do have I'm fortunate enough to have gone through all of the different kind of tests with Dr. D. So I have some things that I can eat and that are really good for me that may not be the same for other typos. For instance, oats is not every typo can have oats, but I can. So it really depends on time of year. I go in these weird phases where I'll eat the same exact thing for a long period of time, switch it to another thing. But right now I'm in this groove of having a slice of gluten-free toast, which I use oat bread with a little bit of ghee and then pumpkin seed butter with a little sea salt. And I love it. I'm addicted to it. And then, but sometimes if I feel like I need more protein, I'll have eggs. And I think the tricky part with breakfast for a lot of people that they get stuck on is that the prepare in advance kind of aspect of it. Other things you can prepare in advance, but breakfast, people are usually running out the door, dealing with their kids or dogs or whatever it is. But there's a lot, you can even make a wild mushroom frittata, and keep it in the fridge. And then it's really easy to grab and go. And that's something that you've made homemade. It lasts a couple of days. And then obviously overnight oats, you can make a bunch of them in a row, leave them in the fridge and just grab one each morning. Same with smoothies. You can freeze smoothies. So there's so many tricks to kind of helping people solve for X when it comes to healthy eating. A lot of people who I've spoken to have had all different types of hurdles. But if you just sit back and give it time to process and figure out what, there's always a solution to those hurdles. So,
did your career as a personal and private chef develop after you wrote those cookbooks because of your connection with the blood type diet?
Yes, originally, yes. So I got my first client because we did a launch party in Brooklyn for the cookbooks, and somebody came there who was a trainer for high profile individuals in New York City. And he connected with me. He wanted to maybe start a business together. And then he ended up having a client who really needed to achieve a certain body goal for a film.
Mm-hmm.
And so he called me and he was like, "You're the only person that can do this," which I was like, well, not technically. Like, I've never done this before, ever. I was never a private chef before. I worked for an actor getting ready for a film. And then because that worked, so I helped him achieve his goals. And then he ended up hiring me for the duration of the film and then moved me to LA. And I worked with him for a year and a half before I was recruited for another actor who needed to put muscle and a ton of weight on in a short period of time, but also wanted to do it in a healthy way.
And so in those instances, do you work with a doctor or nutritionist to make sure you're doing it right, or using your knowledge from what you learned about eating right with your blood type and just applying that to the clients?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination. So with my first client, I used the blood type diet quite a lot. With my second client, he didn't explicitly ask me to use the blood type diet, but I did ask his blood type. And he had somebody that he was working with who basically had a specific amount of calories that he had to consume in order to achieve this like maximum body build in a very short window of time. So, but even with that, like, it wasn't working for him. He was getting super ill. And I had to then sort of take control and be like, okay, like, I'm not here to make anyone sick. So I don't care what the doctor says. If this is too much for your body, we're backing off. And if that doesn't work for you, want someone to just bulldoze you, it's not me. Like, I'm leaving.
That's brave.
But he kept me on for that. And we did take it slow, and a little bit slower than the doctor advised, but he in particular was having like checkups to make sure that his organs were okay. Like, it's not easy to put huge amount of muscle or even fat or anything on any body transformation that happens in a short window of time is really tough, and you have to be super careful.
That's so interesting and kind of a little scary.
Yeah, it definitely is. And like, that's why for me, again, the focus is on really clean food and making sure that everything that I provide for my clients, I know is as healthy and clean as possible. And then, you have to always remember that, if you're participating and you're helping somebody with something like that, like, you have to be comfortable with it too. And I wasn't at first. So I just wouldn't do it. Like, there was no way I would listen to a doctor just because he's a doctor, in spite of seeing the results were not healthy for him.
Yeah. Very brave of you speaking up. I think most people think, it would be easy, but it's always tough when it's your client or when it's somebody you care about and they're getting advice from a variety of directions. So well done, Chef.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what I find really fascinating about your career evolution is how these pivots that you've constantly made. Do you think that what is it that you've done to prepare yourself or open you up for these amazing opportunities that have come into your life, or these opportunities that have allowed you to take new paths?
I love that question. Thank you for that question. It's interesting. When I first started trying to get into the food space, because I have my master's in art therapy and I was working as an art therapist. And then I wanted to cook for health, and I pitched a cooking show to Food Network. That was the first thing I did. I hired a videographer, created a concept for a show, and pitched it to Food Network. And they signed me. We did a pilot, and then we pitched to Food Network. And ultimately, this was years ago. I mean, I was 26. I'm 42 now. So it was many moons ago, but they ultimately said no because it was too healthy. Mm-hmm. So, and at the time, they were right. And the sponsorships that they have through commercials, like, it just wouldn't work. And I kind of felt in that moment, okay, well, that career choice is over. I had this goal of wanting to be, and I didn't have a vision for what would happen after that or beyond it. It was just because I think it's hard to imagine the possibilities that are out there. But what I realized was that, and my dad really pushed me. Both my parents were super supportive. And my dad kind of said, well, you have to just you have to go get it. You have to just get out there. And so I think I learned really early on with that rejection from Food Network that, you have a choice to either continue putting out this thing into the world that you really love and trying to pursue it and being open to whatever comes your way and exploring that. And it may or may not work out. But when you have like, I mean, I have a passion for healthy food and for cooking, and it's just comes from me. So it made sense to me to continue seeing where that went, instead of saying to myself, oh, you failed at this like Food Network attempt, forget it, give up, goodbye. Yeah. So it just really taught me a huge lesson to try to be flexible. And that honestly, I could never have imagined the career that I have. I could never have said to myself, this is going to be my plan. I'm going to like set a goal and go right towards that, because I don't think it would have worked out the same way. Yeah.
And do you think, you have a podcast that you've done, you love the combination of food, health, and wellness. Are there activities that you do in your personal life that you think help you in those moments where you know that things aren't working out, but you just have to keep going along? Is it, certain types of workouts, meditation? What is it for you?
For me, yeah, I've tried meditation. I really struggle sitting still. And ironically, with the blood type diet, also type O's are, when you feel stressed, you should be higher activity and like go for a run or do something. I have a really bad knee, so I can't necessarily do that, but I do love to work out. I think sleep is super important and really prioritizing that. So because like, at least I've noticed for myself, and I'm sure it's universally true, that the less sleep you get, the more anxiety, even depression, it just sets you off in the wrong kind of foot through the rest of your day, week, whatever it is. And so I'm sure you know this, but with our jobs, you have to get up way before everyone else, because usually like you're in a home making breakfast, by 7 a.m. So our days start pretty early. So I'm unapologetically a grandma and go to sleep like 9, not really, but yeah, like I go to sleep super early. And also I think like eating in a smaller window and being really aware and conscious about I don't think it's just the food you eat. I think it's your mentality around the food. So I really do think of food as like, I think you were saying this earlier, it's really about balance. So I know that if I've had the toast with pumpkin seed butter in the morning, I want to have a more robust lunch in terms of protein. Thinking of food is like, yes, it's joyful, it's delicious, it's all these things, but at the same time, it's working for you. Like it's our fuel for our body, our mental health. And so, yeah. And I think the personalized approach that I learned from Dr. D at the beginning really helped me kind of set a tone for myself to look inward and really understand what I need. On days that I'm really tired, I don't go for the long walk or workout, because I'm going to deplete myself instead of the opposite, So I think you learn to look within and to really listen and then respond.
How do you listen to what your body wants when you spend so much time cooking for other people and you've touched all this other food? How do you recognize what you actually need to take in?
That's a really good question. I think that's a question only a chef would come up with, actually, very much.
For instance, I know that if I've cooked like Swiss chard for all these clients all week long, I forget that I actually haven't eaten it.
Yes.
And it's been weeks or months since I've had chard. So
yeah. Yeah.
So it's a weird thing when you touch food. It's the beginning of the digestive process.
Yeah.
But chefs, sometimes we can forget that we actually haven't consumed it, and that can affect our health and well-being. So, and also,
definitely can.
Yeah, and also you're around all this different food, so sometimes you can't figure out what you actually want to eat and what you need. So I'd love to know how you navigate that.
No, amazing question. That's so interesting. I don't think I've ever like really thought about that. So I really love that question. The reality is, for me, my reaction to being around food is that I don't get hungry. So I actually have to be really conscious about eating. So for instance, right now, my client, I get up at 5, I leave at 6, and I come back around 3. And I don't eat a meal in that time, because the other thing that I feel with food is I like it to be very conscious. Like I like to be very conscious about it. So I don't like the feeling of eating on the go. To me, that becomes mindless. And then my body isn't processing whether or not I've eaten. So that becomes a huge problem. I'm not saying I have no food. Like sometimes I'll like nibble on a banana, or, I'll taste whatever I'm eating. So it's not like I'm like getting nothing. But that means that during that time, I have an actual plan for myself that it's not like I'm like super rigid, but I know, I've done this for 12 years. So I know that those mornings I'll get up, or I'll have like an overnight oats prepared. And even though it's early, which I hate eating that early, I force myself to eat. And so that I know I'm getting really good nutrition before I go into work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I drink water and tea and all that stuff. And when I get home during those days, I know the exact lunch I'm going to have. I know exactly what I'm going to eat when I get home. It's not a mystery. And I think that's no matter what you're doing, that's such a hiccup for a lot of people, is like getting to the point where you're starving and then being like, I have no idea what to do, looking around and eating like the crappiest thing because it's easiest, right? But I know my routine when I'm in the work environment. So I always get home, have a huge, massive salad filled with like maybe some roasted veggies that I had in the fridge or like a lot of fresh ones. And I do like a scrambled egg or like a little like almond wrap thing, chicken, whatever it is, but heavy protein. And then I eat a dinner that's like a little bit more kind of filling. But it's more for me like in that it's such a smart connection to have made, because I don't think I really fully consciously made that connection before you asked that question. But it is something that like I think is I have over the years just planned for myself to know exactly what to do, because otherwise you're right. I think a lot of times too, people like if you lose your appetite, you end up going for foods that are less healthy. So it's important to kind of like have a plan for yourself and just get in a routine. So it's not something that you're consciously having to always decide and, question.
I've noticed through the years that now I have to sit down and consciously eat a meal. I have to make sure I also set out like a window of time, even if it's just 20 minutes, and it has to be peaceful when I eat, or else I don't digest the food and I can feel it afterwards and I'll have a stomach ache or I'll overeat or I just will feel off the rest of the day. That I have to make sure that I take that time to eat a meal and I eat it in a place where it's calm and peaceful and I'm not in a rush.
Yes, but me too. That's exactly how I feel. And I think like in those circumstances, your body digests much better. And so all around, it's just a better experience for you and your body, mental health, all of it.
In the same vein of what we're talking about, have you had clients that you approach them with menu ideas for the week ahead and they just don't know what they want? How do you help people through when they don't know what they want?
So interestingly, my client that I have now is the first client that I've ever given a menu to. Every other client that I've had, I am in 100% control of their food. So I tell them what to do.
Oh my
So
God.
they don't get to decide anything. Well, because they're usually coming in the past, they're coming to me for a certain goal. So
Yeah.
I create a plan around that goal. And then I'm during the day or during the week, I'm observing how they're doing. And then I make the adjustment for them. And they obviously tell me things like, and they tell me their likes and dislikes. It's not like I'm forcing them to eat food they don't like. But until this past year, I have every single client I've had, I've never done a menu in my life. Never, ever, never.
Amazing.
But what I do is usually like for this client, I create a menu and I propose it to them. I send it to them and then they can make changes so that they know what to expect. And then if they feel like they want something, then I can just fit that into the menu, somewhere. It's a great relationship and easy dynamic so that I'm giving them options and then they can come back and say, well, actually like kind of craving this or haven't had this in a while. And so it makes it really easy.
Is there anything right now that you're making for your clients that you've been wanting to take the time to make for yourself at home?
I cook really simply for myself at home, I have to say. Like I really cook very simply. And I think I get out all of my creative expression at work and it feels good. I love doing that. And then when I get home, I'm usually tired and I'm busy. I'm starting my own company. So I have all of that going on. So yeah, I think it would be nice to get back into doing some more. I think I would like to do more planning of having easy things in the freezer. I have soups and stews and different things like that in my freezer for myself, but it would be great to have like bone broths and more things that I really love to have that are like super nutritious and just have that kind of like ready to go, but spend a day a week just cooking like that. But I just right now I'm launching the company in 6 weeks, so I don't have time.
Yeah, someday. Well,
Yeah.
tell me more about the product that you're creating, Super Dirt, and what led you to make your own product.
Yeah, so it's kind of for the reason that you and I have been talking about, where food, we are sort of not prioritizing our own food. And I think a lot of people do that for a lot of different reasons, whether they're busy with kids or traveling for work or just have a demanding job. I felt like at a certain point I was actually on a European tour with one of my clients, and I was making him very specific meals to achieve his body goals. And I had been cooking in like 3 different cities. I had no time for myself, no time to like figure out what to eat, just like you were saying a few minutes ago. And I was on the plane going to another location, watching him eat like 2 seats in front of me, this perfectly crafted meal. And I had like plain snacks as an option, you know? And I just thought there just has to be a better vehicle for a balanced snack, something that can be a snack or in a real dire situation, kind of like it's not meant as a meal replacement, but it can fill you up in that sort of satiating and sustaining way. So I started crafting the concept for Super Dirt. Super Dirt Foods is my company, and Ballers is the first product. So Ballers are these little plant-based bites. They come in little gusseted pouches, and there's 6 in a pouch, and I have 6 different flavors. I really felt like also anything that was sort of in that format they're a bit like the texture of a protein ball or protein bite, but I didn't emphasize the protein component as much. It's more of a balance of protein, fiber, and there's vegetables in every single one. And, and the texture is like a little bit softer. It's not so dense, but they all sort of tasted the same to me. Like even when it was called like chocolate peanut butter or whatever it was called, it tasted to me like it was cashews, coconut, I don't know, dates.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. I found out there's a reason for that. It's because manufacturing is very, very difficult. Making a shelf stable product is no small feat. And I want it to be a shelf stable product because I want it to be easy for people to take on the go, to feed to their kids, you know. So I created Ballers, and the 6 flavors are all really prominent. Like you really taste the ginger in the ginger zing. The mocha maca, you know, has the kind of coffee maca taste to it. It's energizing. Lemon greens taste like lemon greens. And they all have a little bit of sweetness to them because they're part of how they're bound is with fruit. So there's raisins, figs, and dates.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I'm very excited. They're literally amidst manufacturing right now for our first run, and we launch, fingers crossed, the beginning of April is when we're supposed to go live on our website. So
Congratulations.
it's been a really long time coming. Thank you. It's been a lot of work and a long time coming.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And it's really just the beginning, and it's going to get more and more exciting as, you know, you go through the process. Is it your own company or do you have partners?
It is my own company. I have people who are working on it with me. I have a partner she's like a small partner. And then I have some people who invested early on, my brother was my first investor, and he's also a doctor. So he's our medical advisor. He's taken on a role of being a lot more than a medical advisor for us, but he has a full-time job. So he does what he can to help. And I have an amazing network of friends and family who not just support me, but they really help me with the company. My friend Elizabeth and Mandy, like they work in different areas of, one works in food, one has experience in marketing and branding and finance. So they help me in a way that is just like, it's unbelievable. So I feel like, yes, it's my company, but I have an amazing community of support around me.
And while you're doing this, you're still working as a chef. How many clients do you have right now?
I just have one. I only have ever had one at a time. And my client now is absolutely amazing. I feel incredibly lucky. They know that I'm starting my company. They're incredibly flexible with me. They are cheering me on. I honestly couldn't ask for a better person to work for or people to work for. So yeah, I feel incredibly grateful to them because I don't think it would be possible. I know it wouldn't be possible in other circumstances because this job, as you know, can be quite demanding. I mean, for most of my career, I've worked 7 days a week. And the job where I was putting muscle on this client, I was starting at 4 in the morning and I'd end at 9 at night. So, 7 days a week. So very hard to start your own business during times like that. But
I understand because I've been doing the same thing, but we just keep going. We just keep going. Our love for food somehow fuels us.
It does.
And we don't even that much of it, you know? It's kind of funny. Someday, I always joke that part of the joy of getting to do this role is I can figure out exactly what I want in the chef that I hire for myself someday.
That's right. That's amazing.
You know?
Could you imagine that though? Could you even imagine,
Yes. No, I have the whole time because I know I want to hire a new, graduate from a health supportive culinary school and give them the opportunities that I would have liked when I was a young chef.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
Just pay it forward in a better way than maybe I found it when I was first navigating my career. Maybe someday we'll see, maybe someday with you, we'll be too
Yeah.
busy with our CPG products that we need support in other ways. So that's,
Yeah.
I try to
Yeah.
keep it in the back of my mind when I've gone 2 weeks without a day off.
Yes.
But
You have to find motivation somewhere.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to know, like, what is kind of next for you? Like, is there other things that you really dream of doing as a chef or business owner?
Right now, I think it's so overwhelming just getting a product off the ground and ready for retail, like ready to sell. And I'm finally, after so many years, on the cusp of doing that. So I'm very much looking forward to actually seeing that product out in the world. So I'm really going to be highly focused on that. I have other product lines that I've already started developing that could be attached to this company, or depending on how it all plays out, maybe their own company separately. But outside of that, I love having my toe in the culinary space, cooking for my client. In an ideal world, I would be able to maintain both, because I love them, and I love Super Dirt. But it's a demanding and difficult arena. But I'm excited. I mean, I think that's kind of, and I feel right now ready to like really just focus on that and be happy and content with what I've achieved and what is about to happen. And then outside of that, I'm just kind of ready to, or we'll see what happens, kind of thing.
In your free time right now, which I know there's very little, is there anything that you're really into in like the health or wellness space that you've been exploring?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've always been really into pursuing alternative health, just anything that I can learn about. I've been really into acupuncture, and learning about that. I love and have been interested in reflexology. Because I think I've had so many knee surgeries, fitness has been a really huge passion of mine, and finding a way to exercise and keep my body super healthy physically also, in spite of my knee, has been, a huge passion of mine. I really love. And that's been something I've navigated kind of on my own for the most part, but that's something that I really love.
Well, as we wrap up, where can people connect with you, follow your adventures as you launch Super Dirt, shop your products, share all the spaces?
Amazing. Yeah. So I guess number one, superdirtfoods is where we're going to be selling ballers. So hopefully in April that is live and they can purchase or subscribe there. And then our Instagram handle is the same, at superdirtfoods. And then me personally, I am at Kristin O'Connor Chef. So those are the kind of main places to find me and find my product.
Perfect. Well, can you leave our guests with just like one last little healthy tip that they could consider adding into their life?
I think slowing down is really one of the most advantageous things. We put so much pressure on ourselves to achieve and accomplish all the time. And sometimes I know, even for myself, I need to remind myself that it's okay to sit in silence, to watch a movie, to relax, and that it's not, you don't have anything to prove. It's not bad for you. It's actually really good to give yourself restorative moments, and to really kind of let go of the idea that your day has to be jam-packed for you to be meaningful, that it's okay to just be you and to just relax. And, I think that's going to be a huge advantage, especially right now. I mean, everybody is, at least, I mean, I live in New York City, so everywhere I look around, people are just like working harder and harder and harder. So that would be my little piece of advice.
That's some great advice. I really appreciate it, especially like as we get into spring and people, that fire tends to burn, like you're not moving fast enough. You need to go. There is a lot to consider. And when you slow down, that's maybe sometimes when things happen.
Yeah, all the time. I don't think I would have conceived of my product and starting a company if I didn't have moments to actually slow down and take those moments in between my cooking gigs. It would never have happened.
Well, Kristin, it's been so great to connect with you. I'm so excited for you and for your launch, and just continuing to follow your culinary journey. I'm so glad we've connected.
Thanks so much, Whitney. It was really fun. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.